Hello, and thank you for your interest in the Parish Nurse electronic documentation system developed by us at Pittsburgh Mercy Health System. My name is Dorothy Mayernick. I'm a parish nurse since 2001, and my colleague on this documentation project is Nancy Marshall. Nancy is the database designer and technical expert. We're both working to make documentation easier, more accurate, and more efficient for faith community nurses. I'd just like to add that Nancy and I owe a debt of gratitude to more than 50 faith community nurses who tested this system and gave us feedback on how to make it better and more user-friendly. In this video, I'll give you the basics of how to document using this system. For more detailed information about all the many features of this database, contact us and we can email you a copy of the user manual. You can also download a demo version of the database from the Pittsburgh Mercy website. For the demo to operate, your computer must have Microsoft Access. Okay, let's begin the demo. The database is password protected. Type in the password and you'll see this opening screen. All of these blue boxes right here are portals for us to enter information. The brown boxes and the green box that you see over here just tell us what kinds of information we can enter into the database. Let me quickly give you an idea of what's in these boxes. This one is individual clients and volunteers, because some of our clients are actually our volunteers in our health ministry, so that's why it's worded the way it is. I'll click this open, and you will see the client demographic sheet. I want to point out over here where it says blank client data sheet. I'll click on that and it will open up this form. Give you a closer look here. This form can be printed by hitting the print button over here in the corner if you want to make copies and hand them out to your clients that are waiting for their blood pressures to get checked or waiting to see you in the office or whatever. And then you can, at a later date, enter this information into the database. So I'll close the print preview. Another useful thing that I'd like to show you is this client data sheet. We have this demo version of the database loaded with 77 clients, fake names, pretend data. So let me just open this client data sheet and you'll see that everything that we have entered on John Adams will be printed on this sheet. And it actually goes into two sheets too. Here's the second sheet. All of the contacts and all of the interventions and the notes that we entered in the care of this client. So that can be a useful tool for you. I'm going to close this print preview right now. Okay, with 77 clients loaded into this demo database, how am I going to find somebody that I want to document on? It's very easy. You go to the Find a Client box up here, put your cursor in there, and I'm going to look for Jack Horner. So I'll type in H-O-R, the first few letters, and you can see the name came up. Click on that, and there we have Jack Horner's medical record. Let me close out of here. I will click on the Close Form button here, and we're back at the opening screen. Just let me show you the other portals to enter information would be this field for blood pressure screening, and it's a very efficient way to enter information on the clients that you saw at a blood pressure screening, maybe 10 or 20 clients, who knows, could be a lot, and it's very simple. I'll go back to this a little bit later with more detail. This is just like the quick look. Okay, the small groups, same idea. If you have a small group, like a senior exercise group or weight loss group, whatever it happens to be, it's very easy to document that group activity. More on that later as well. Right here is church and community contacts, because many times the faith community nurse is out there in the community at large doing things, or within the faith community itself. So here is an example. I typed in that on August 14th, I met with a single seniors group. There were 12 in attendance, and the subject was walking for exercise. The purpose was education. You can see there's other purposes that you could select. And I logged in 1.5 hours during this activity. We would use this whenever we are just dealing with numbers. We just want to know how many people attended a certain activity. This screen only shows what is logged in for the last 60 days. If we want to see all the community activities that we have logged in, just click on that, and that will show, it will pop up, and you have your record right there. So I'm going to close this form and close again. And now I'd like to show you volunteer participation, because many times our volunteers help us out with health ministry activities. For example, I've written in here on the 22nd, the activity was transportation, giving someone a ride to church. My volunteer was Nancy Marshall, and here's the client, was Mrs. Williams, and we have a record of that. Again, within the past 60 days, they will show on the screen. To see all volunteer participation, check back, we can open that up, and we can see who helped at the Halloween party, or the senior exercise group, or took a meal to somebody. And we'll just close that. Here's a place to log in gifts given. You may want to give gifts to people in the community that aren't church members, or people you don't even know. So this is a place where you can log that in when you don't know who the recipient is. For example, I have that on the August 1st, Amy Marsh was given a prayer shawl. Now, I'm going to click on this to see all gifts. So this will give an idea of all the gifts that was given by this particular health ministry. Poinsettias, boots for winter, Easter baskets, Valentine baskets. This is a good place to document these things. And we'll close there. Here is a box for write a parish nursing story. Sometimes we need qualitative documentation, but there's an interesting story of someone that was served by parish nursing and how the parish nurse made a difference. And you might want to just write an anecdotal story here, just to keep in the records when you're reporting to the pastor or the church board. Sometimes these stories really speak to the heart of what parish nursing really is. And you can print it, you can keep it in here safe and sound. Okay, we're going to close this form. The next area that we can enter information is expenses. I'm going to just go back here to give you an example. We bought paper at Staples. Here's the cost. Category office supplies. So if you want to keep track, whether you get reimbursed or whether it's a donation, that you might be able to deduct from your income tax, but you could put keep a record here very easily. And we'll close this form. The next one is enter hours. I just want to point out that you can type things in, like, for example, I typed in on August the 10th, I did 2 hours of prep time for a presentation that I was going to do to the Women's Guild. Now, these other things for the blood pressure screenings, when I entered my hours into that blood pressure screening button that I showed you earlier, it's going to automatically drop into this hours field. So it will capture that for you, any hours that you document in the other small groups or the blood pressure screenings. And we can see all the hours here for whatever activities that the parish nurse has entered in there. And we're going to close that form. Same idea with mileage. If you keep track of mileage for your visits to the hospital to visit clients, or a visit to their home, or a community location, or whatever it is, and you can, if there's something different, you can just type it in, and it will become part of this drop-down box. And now just a quick preview of the reports section. And these are just different variations of reports, but we'll just go to the main report section for the purposes of this demo. And you can see that you must type in the start date and the end date. And we have, I believe there's 49 different kinds of reports that you can get. And I'm going to come back to this a little bit later at the very end of the demo to show you a few things. But there are copies, there are examples of each report in our user manual. You could take a look at those and get an idea of what might be useful for you. So I'm going to just close this form. Now let's go into this brand new clean database and document on an individual client. Open that up. I'd like you to notice across the top these tabs. They're like the dividers in a paper chart. This is the client demographic sheet, contacts and problems and interventions I'm going to get to in just a minute, but you can also use this medications field and you can make a list of the client's medications. You can print them out if you want to and hand them to them to keep in their wallet. Here's the next tab is medical conditions. This may be useful for you, it may not. It's just we put a lot of things in the database that some people liked, some people said they'd never used it. So it's up to the individual nurse. If something in here that you don't think you ever have use for, well, you just don't use it. But it's in here for anybody that wants it. So you can document a medical condition, for example, they're in order of systems. Well, this is good that this popped up because it shows that I made a mistake and didn't enter a value in the diagnosis. So I'm going to just click OK. That reminds me. And you can also, when you get these pop-up boxes, you can, if you pick the wrong thing, all you have to do is hit the escape key, and it takes you back to a very, a clean field. But anyway, you can pick your medical conditions and then write in how the client describes the problem. For example, I have high blood pressure. So in that way, you're documenting the problem, but you're not making a medical diagnosis. The next thing along the tabs is allergies. You can type in allergy information in there, what it happens to be and what the reaction is. And the next tab over is a place to scan in a document. This is something new that we recently added based on a request from one of our faith community nurses. This nurse wanted to have a completely paperless system and wanted to have the HIPAA form that the client signed, be able to be scanned into the computer. So this will give you the capability of doing that, to scan any document that is in a PDF form, and it can become part of the database. And the last tab over is a place to write a client's history in the event that you would need to make a more extensive note. You would have room to do that right there. I'm going to close that out. Now we're going to actually document on a client. And you can see the yellow boxes. These are the only boxes that you absolutely must fill in. The rest of the boxes, it's up to you. But the database will not function properly if these yellow boxes are not filled in. So all we need to absolutely enter would be a first name, and we'll call our client Jane. And I'm going to hit the tab button, and I move to the next field. And of course, she's going to be Jane Doe. Now, if Jane is a volunteer, I would click on that because that gives us access to her name in the various reports that pull up volunteer activities. I'm going to uncheck it because for this purpose, she's not a volunteer. We need a site of initial client contact. Most of us have one church that we see our clients, but sometimes nurses have 2 or 3 churches, maybe go to a food bank, a clothing bank, senior center, whatever it is. So you want to have the site of where you first met this client. First of all, you have to add that information. I already added PMC is the abbreviation. I'm going to call my site Pittsburgh Mercy Chapel, and I'll close the form. So now when I go over here, I will click that on, and it gives me my site. And we also need the gender of the client. So we're going to fill in female there. Now, just to show you about the date of birth, if you happen to know it and type it in, let's say her date of birth is 08/14/1952. And when I hit the tab button, her age will automatically come up here in this little box. Of course, it's always going to be up to date because the computer knows that from 1952 and will calculate that out. Another useful thing is a place to enter emergency contacts and doctors for the client. So just to open that up, you can put in the contact's name, their relationship, whether they're the spouse, son, daughter, PCP, friend, whatever it happens to be. And you would have their contact information that you know there. And we'll just close that form there. Another nice feature is this notes screen right here, this big space here. You can type in any notes that maybe you're not sure where to put them in the database. And there's also a very nice feature of mailing labels. We have the capability of printing address labels for mailings. So that's another one of the nice features you can read more about in the user manual. Okay, so let's get back to work on Jane Doe here and doing the documentation. Let's say we saw Jane Doe today at the church, right after church. And so we're going to document on that contact, on this contact screen here. We'll click on that tab, and we automatically get a little field to enter the information. I want to show you that today's date is going to automatically be printed in this yellow box. But if you maybe you saw her yesterday, you can just back out of there, 081517, hit the tab button, and you can backdate any of your charting if you need to. We have some choices of the type of interaction: one-on-one, phone call, email, or blood pressure screening. So this was a one-on-one. I typed my name in here earlier, so I'm the nurse. And the intervention, these are the interventions for faith community nursing: assess, support, counsel, educate, refer, and advocate. On this particular screen, the intervention will always be assessed. If we need to do any other kind of an intervention, I'll show you where we're going to go with that. So we'll select assess. And the location is the church. Now, if we, let's say, just to show you, if you go to the food pantry or some other senior center or something, you can just type that in, and that becomes part of your drop-down list. See that right there? So you can customize it to meet the needs of your own ministry. Okay, so we saw Jane Doe after church, and we took her blood pressure, and it was 240/120. And when I hit the tab, you can see automatically it would come up by blood pressure crisis. I'd like to click on this green edge here. And we see that we get a pop-up of something that was actually scanned in here to the database. And it is giving us the normal and the hypertension values from the American Heart Association as a reference. So this is where the information comes from. It might be useful to show that to our clients so that they know, okay, you're in pre-hypertension or you're in stage 1, you know, whatever it is, you have that documentation to share. And and you can print it out again too. Anything, like I said, you can print any of these documents. Okay, let's close with the X. Next, we will type in Jane Doe's pulse rate. Let's say it's 92. Hit the tab button. Her heart rate was regular. Place for blood sugar if you happen to be checking anyone's blood sugar. And there's a place for weight and height. And we don't always use that, but it's here. And I'll just quickly show you that if we type in a weight of 170 and a height of 67 and hit the tab button, we get the BMI of 27, which is in the overweight category. And the same idea here to get a chart showing all these BMI values. We click on this green screen. There we go. Look how that works. And we get this chart so that we can show our clients, you know, where exactly they are on this BMI chart. So that can be handy. We don't need any other references for that. It's all right here for us. Okay, I'm going to close that print preview. The next thing is a box to document spiritual care, since that is so integral to faith community nursing. And we try to make it as easy as possible and as complete as possible. And we all came up with these 10 things that are spiritual interventions that are very commonly used. and we will select whatever one is appropriate. And if there's something else that you particularly do, you can type that in and it will become part of the list. So in this case, I'm going to put blessing because many times, at the end of the client visit, the faith community nurse will say, God bless you. Now, if this client had a normal blood pressure and no complaints and no concerns that were addressed during the visit, then we are done charting. That's all we need to do. But in the case of Jane Doe and her blood pressure of 240/120, we are going to have to document a problem and an intervention. So we're going to do that on this Problems and Interventions tab right here. This is a representation of the problem list that we have built into the database. We could not use NANDA, NIC, and NOC because it is copyrighted material. And the only way that we could use it is by obligating ourselves and every user, anyone that purchased our documentation system would be obligated to pay a yearly licensing fee to the publisher because of the copyright. So that was not at all practical for our purposes. And so we opted to go for a simple problem list. And when you look at it a little closer, you can see that it is based on symptoms, what the client describes to us, and signs, what the nurse observes. That's how the problems are defined. There's a list of 60 problems, and then there's this list of social situations, living situations, 9 different ones. So basically, we're working with a small list of 60 problems, and we have found that this pretty much covers the things that we would encounter in our parish nurse ministry. I think one of the beauties of just using a simple system like this is that anyone can understand the problems that we are dealing with. So if our pastor wants to know what kind of things we are addressing, everyone would understand blood pressure elevated, fatigue, loneliness, numbness and tingling, whatever. All these, it's understandable. It's not an esoteric type of language that only nurses would understand. So that's why we did it, and I just wanted to explain that a little bit. Now I want to document Jane Doe's problems that we identified from our meeting with her. First of all, we'll go to the category, and we have physical, mental, spiritual, social, financial, and relational, the holistic categories that I just showed you from the screen previous with the problem list. Okay, the first thing I'm going to address is her extremely high blood pressure. So the category would be physical. I'll select that. When I hit the tab button or enter, then you can see that all the physical problems are going to appear in this box. So let me select blood pressure elevated. And then I'm going to hit the tab. This will open up the box where we do a more in-depth assessment. So the assessment is going to be a way that we can rate the problem through time. Right now, this problem, 240/120, I'm going to consider that an emergency. If her blood pressure was 170/90, that would probably that would rate as an active unresolved problem. But in this case, it's an emergency. We have to do something. And here again are our interventions we already assessed. Now we have to decide, are we going to support, counsel, educate, refer, or advocate? So, well, I'm thinking we're going to need to advocate and do something. Call her doctor. My name in there, type of contact is going to be one-on-one. And here we're going to make a little note about the action taken. So I can type in PCP called, said to bring client to office now. Oh, that's happened to me more than once. So, and then you can continue to type in what happened when you got to the doctor. Did you call the family to take them? Did you drive them yourself, or whatever? You can do your progress note. The only thing you must avoid in writing a progress note is do not write anybody's name, because whenever we were able to pull up reports on these clients, we don't want any identifying information. So we do not refer to anybody by name. That's a little side note, but that was a good place to work that in. Okay, let's say we're going to close that one now. So that is, you can see that's on the blood pressure elevated problem sheet. I'm going to close that. Well, let's put in a couple more problems that we identified. A mental problem on that list was knowledge deficit, because Jane Doe did not know very much about her blood pressure medications. So once again, I'm backdating since this was 8/15. And I'm going to call this an active problem. It's not an emergency. My intervention is going to be educate. Fill that in. The nurse's name is here because sometimes, the health ministry, you might have 2 or 3 nurses working together. So that's why we need to have the name there. Okay, one-on-one. And then we can talk about whatever it was we discussed with the client. Close. And we're going to close the form there. Okay. I'm not going to bother to change these dates for the demo purposes. I just had wanted to show you that you can type any day that you want, but it's convenient if it all happens on the same day and you don't have to change anything. Okay, the next problem, let's select something from relational. And we're going to say that Jane Doe is in conflict with another. She is not getting along with her sister. They're having a disagreement, and she tells you about it. Once again, the assessment is an active problem. The intervention in this case, I want to try to find out a little more about what's going on, and I'm going to select my intervention as counseling because that involves a little more back and forth exchange of information. My name there, one-on-one. And then I would document a little note, progress note, about what took place related to that problem. Okay, I'm going to close the form here. Let's do another problem. Let's try something spiritual. And there's 2. We all know spiritual distress is a common listed problem in our taxonomies. And we thought need for spiritual strength would be another thing, something that we can give spiritual care. So she's having a high blood pressure and doesn't get along with her sister, and we need to support her in this. So we have, again, an active problem. Our intervention is going to be support. It could possibly be refer if you think she should talk to the pastor and you want to suggest that. Whatever it is you do, and you just type that in, make your little note. We're going to close the form. And one more problem, let's say financial. And when that pops up, there's only one financial need, and we'll have to just define that once we get into this screen here. Again, that's an active problem. Intervention is going to be refer. If she needs groceries, we're going to refer her to the food pantry. If she can't afford her medications, we're going to refer her to some sort of a social service agency that might help her fill out some forms to get some help from the pharmaceutical companies. And we would write all that information in our progress note. Okay, and we're going to close out of here. Now, when we're all done with whatever problems, one problem or 5 problems, click on this red button here, Show Latest Updates. And all of the problems that we entered will come up here. Now, for example, on another day, we go back and document, like this one, document on the 15th. I'm going to write a follow-up. And let's just say her blood pressure is elevated, okay, let's just say miraculously her problem's resolved, okay, and you're just going to support. Okay, this is just for demonstration purposes. We're going to close the form, and now when we go over here and show latest updates, right here where blood pressure elevated is an emergency, show latest updates, it's problem resolved. Now this is just to help us whenever we're trying, when we look at this screen and we think, oh, what's going on in here? Well, we don't have to open every single box to find out. We can just go over here and think, oh, well, these are the ones we need to follow up on, and we don't have to worry about the blood pressure. So I am going to close. Let's see. No, let's go back to the client demographics. Just since we were talking about those problems that the clients had, notice, well, you're not going to notice it here because it's in the demo version, but anybody that has a problem is going to have 3 stars after their name. Let me pull up that demo. Give me a second. Okay, here we are at the demo. And when I click on to find a client, if you notice these asterisks after people's names, that indicates that they have an active, at least one active problem. So that's another cue for the faith community nurse to know who to follow up on. And back here on the problem sheet here is also a place that we can type in date of next visit or call, so that it serves as a reminder that we need to call Jane Doe. Maybe we'll call her on 081917. And then there is one of the reports that we have. We'll give a list of anybody that we need to follow up on, so that, it's just like a nice handy list. So I wanted to show you that feature because it can be useful. Okay, let's see, let me close here. We are coming into the home stretch of this demo, and just a very quick demo of how we do blood pressure screenings. We'll just click on the box again, and as you can see, we're going to need to type in the date. And we're going to pick a site. Let's see, I'm going to add a site. Well, if you need to add a site, you go in here. I think I already did add the site that I was going to demo on. But you can just add your site there when you get your clean database. My site is going to be Pittsburgh Mercy, like that. My hours are 2, and today's date's automatically going to pop up. Now you can see the client list is readily available, everybody that's in there. So I can just go ahead and pick my clients, type in their blood pressure, their heart rate and rhythm, any other information, do the next person, find the next person. Let's find Jack Horner here again. See, just type that in and go on down the line until you can enter like 20 people. Really doesn't take that long. Now, what I want to show you, though, sometimes there is more that you need to document on people at a blood pressure screening. So we're going to take John Doe, for example. Well, he told us about something that was going on and we need to enter a new problem. So we're going to click on enter a new problem, and we get to John Doe's problem list, and we can add whatever it is that it happens to be. Let's say he is having a lot of anxiety. Okay. And then we would proceed to document on that assessment. We'll just make that a problem, etc. down the line. And we close that. We close that. And you see we're right back to our blood pressure screening chart here. So it's an easy transition from one field to the next field and then to come back again. You don't have to go in and out. So I'm going to, let's see. We're going to close this form now. But I'd like to show another little helpful thing that I used a lot when I did blood pressure screenings out in the community when I was working as a faith community nurse for Mercy and doing maybe 8 or 10 screenings a month. I would go into my database and I would just type a site in. So I wanted to know all the people that I saw at this Pittsburgh Mercy site last month. I wanted the names and their blood pressures. So I just typed in the initials for the site. I'll go to this top button here, attendance with blood pressure at the site, and then I'll click on that, and it gives me a list of everybody that I saw last month. Now, if you saw them for 6 months in the past, you're going to get a whole list here, which eventually is going to happen. And you can print it out. I always printed it out and took it with me. And then, I would write their blood pressure in this little box, put some notes if I had to remind me to chart other problem areas. And then when I got back to the office, I could put everything into the computer. So that I found useful, really useful, and I wanted to point that out. So I'm going to close this screen with this little X right here. And I'll close out of this form with the red button there. With the small groups, it's the same idea as blood pressure screenings. Your date, your small group, name, your intervention, location. Now, for example, if you're in this group and you want to add a new client, the people that somebody new attended the group, all you have to do is go to add a new client or volunteer. And this gives us a little reminder that we must enter the site and then at least the last name, first name, and gender of the new client. Okay, so we could put their name and information here in the yellow boxes, close the form, and their name will appear in this drop-down list. So it's like really easy to do that. So now I'm going to close this form. Now, last but not least, a little bit about the reports. As I mentioned, you're going to type in the start date and the end date, whether it is a monthly report that you're giving or a yearly report or 6 months, whatever it is. I always give like a report to my health ministry at church, maybe every quarterly. So I'll type in the appropriate months and we can see, the results of what we did. But once again, these reports have no client names on them, and these reports do have client names. For example, if you want to have pure numbers information, use this report, summary of all contacts and time frame, and it will give you all the individual clients you saw, how many client contacts, just all the numbers, anybody that was in a small group, the dates of the sessions. You can see it's page 1 of 3, since this is a year report. It really beats going through every single chart and trying to come up with a report manually. You can see how easy it is just to click on that button. And you can also print these reports, and you can email these reports also if you want to email them into your your supervisor, or if you happen to be the coordinator, your faith community nurses can be emailing them to you, or they can be exported to a rich text format file and emailed that way as a PDF. So, there are a lot of different ways that you can do that, and they're very easy to catch on to. So I'm going to close that print preview. Another useful thing I think is this interventions without client name. If you really want to give your pastor or your parish board information on what are you actually doing, how are you serving your congregation, you can print this up, and there are no client names, only identified by male or female. And all the comments, as I said, in the progress notes are going to be printed, so that's why it's important not to put anybody's name in here. But we can see depression, for example. Let me go and find another. We put a lot of fake data in here just to fill it up. But for example, neglected, started out as an active problem and it ended up problem resolved. So it's possible to have 2, 3, 4, 5, to show the progress, show your outcomes, show that what we are doing to help people. So I'm going to close that print preview. And this side, as I mentioned, has the names on the reports. So you can take a look at those on the demo or in the user manual to see if anything is going to be useful for you. Here's some mailing labels for all clients that could come in handy. And let's say you don't want to waste labels, so you have one that you've used these and these are the clean ones. You can just pick the label that you want to start on, and you will get a printout formatted for your particular sheet of labels. So that's kind of handy. I just wanted to show you that. And we'll close out of this field for now. So this concludes the demo of Pittsburgh Mercy's documentation system. Please feel free to contact us if you have any questions and if you're interested in purchasing. Thanks for your attention. Of course, keep up the good work, and we wish you God's choicest blessings as you continue your faith community nurse ministry.